Well, good evening, and I am so happy to see you even at a distance. Please feel free to continue eating or drinking. Everything is fine. I am going to share with you, I'm a little distressed that you're so far away from the camera. There are some of you in that room that I just want to run around and give you a hug because it's so wonderful to see you. It's so wonderful to see you. Yes, so that's making my heart a little sad that I can't be there in person or that you can't be here with me. I also know that there are some new faces in the room, and I really, really want to be able to hear your voices as well. So I'm hoping that throughout this hour that is possible. Let me share a little bit about myself. I was thinking about how should I introduce myself? And I decided that I would share with you some of my social identities. That's a topic that is near and dear to my classes at the moment as I greet 100 new students in 4 different classes. Who are we? Who are we when we come into the learning space to be with one another? So my full name is Maria Guajardo. I am Latina. I identify as Latina. I was born and raised in the United States to parents who were Mexicanos. So I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants, but fully educated in the US. So on the one hand, I have all of those Western values, but I was raised in a very traditional Mexican home. So if you were to come to my home this weekend, you would be eating Mexican food. That's just the way it is, yeah? So I'm a mother. My son is 26 years old. Santiago is here in Japan with me. And much to my amazement, he speaks Japanese. He keeps telling me I just have to go hang out in the bars more often and that I too could learn Japanese, but that's just not happening. And I have been in Japan now for 10 years. I was invited to Soka University. Denver had been home for me, Denver, Colorado. I was invited to Soka to come and serve as dean and then vice president in the establishment of a more globalized strategy here at Soka University, recruit faculty and students for that. And then we continued to try to advance globalization until the pandemic hit 3 years ago and things came to a sudden halt. I was very happy to have joined some of you there at Laval last year and began this conversation wonderfully, and then greeted 9 of you back here in Tokyo at Soka University in Hachioji. Was very happy to have that experience. My students still talk about those connections. And so as I sat reflecting on the question that was shared with you, I joked with Alex that I was given the hard question of the 3, but I love the depth of your questions. And so it allowed me to pause and reflect, because I am a believer that it's not about having all the right answers. I honestly do not believe, and in your career, you will have many, many questions ahead of you. And it's not about trying to have all the right answers. It's about perceiving what is the real question. And this ability of perception, the ability to perceive what is the question behind the question, I think is extremely valuable. And so as I read your question, and I'm going to read it out to you. I know you know it, but I'm going to read it out to you so that you can just sit with how it sounds. This
I don't know if you can hear me, but you just froze.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, just go back 30 seconds because you just froze there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, not a problem. So I was reading the question, I'll just read it again. How can we educate the young generation about the importance of an effective and open dialogue when an overwhelming amount of harmful bipartisan information is disturbing their judgment? How can we break the cycle of mistrust and restore faith and honesty into world politics? As I read this question, I sat and asked myself, what is it that you're really asking? I don't think that you're asking what I just read. As I reflected on it, I felt that there were three aspects to this question. And what I'd like to do with you in the next 50 minutes is explore with you ways of knowing. Ways of knowing. I'm a fan of Peter Senge's. Peter Senge's a leadership scholar and management consultant. And Peter Senge says, there is a difference between solving problems and creating solutions. He does not see them as the same. Solving problems versus creating solutions. Now, your question is posed as one that would ask me to solve a problem. But I'm going to suggest to you that in the next 45 minutes, we spend some time thinking about what would it take to create solutions. When I sit in this space as an educator, someone who adheres to the pedagogy of value creating education, I believe that it is about connecting head and heart. So in Namrata's talk, you were able to hear about some of the theoretical concepts. You were able to explore how those concepts have been shared by Daisaku Ikeda, the founder of Soka University. I would like to push us now to ask, how do we operationalize these concepts? Because I'm a firm believer that you can't just read and somehow then expect to be a practitioner. I believe we have to put these concepts into practice. So to explore ways of knowing. So what did I do with your question? I unpacked it into three different thoughts. The first one is a new question. I sense that you were asking me, what is my role in contributing to social change? Your question is couched in that seat of, I want to change something. I want to see change in the world. So what is your role in contributing to social change? And I think we have to personalize these questions. Otherwise, we're always talking abstracts. The second part of your question was connected to dialogue. And I believe you were asking, what is the role of effective dialogue? You were implying that dialogue can be ineffective or not open. And so it's really pushing the question, what is the role of effective dialogue? How do you engage in it? I would ask. And then the third is the idea of building trust, because you end your question by saying, I'm living in this context or a cycle of mistrust. There's been a lack of faith and honesty is what you were implying in your question. And I would ask you, how is it that you go about building trust? How do we go about building trust? This month, I actually just read it this morning, the Atlantic Monthly magazine has an article. It's a fabulous article about the diminishing of intimacy in the Western Hemisphere. And they said that when society feels scary, that fear seeps into your closest relationships. So when the outside feels scary, you then also feel scared. And by connection, you then begin to disengage. And your faith and your trust in others diminishes. So I found this fascinating, especially since I was going to be seated with all of you this morning talking about what do you do to build trust? So I want to take this first. So those are the three that I'm going to be working with. What I'd like to do is just share some quick thoughts on each one. And then I'm going to ask you to engage in a dialogue activity, because I think you have to practice this. Those of you who have been with me, either there at Laval or here at Soka, you know how I do these dialogue activities. I'm very strict about them. And I'm going to ask for your help when we get to that part of the hour to work with your peers there, and we'll get it done. All right. So in thinking about what is your role in contributing to social change, I reflected on the peace proposal, and these peace proposals that Daisaku Ikeda wrote for 20 years would be issued in January of every year. These peace proposals would select global topics, but also have very personal connections and themes in them. And then they would be shared with the United Nations, but they would also be shared with all of us. 2 years ago in Daisaku Ikeda's 2021 peace proposal, and these are all online, You could look them up and have access to them. He talks about, given that we have been in this pandemic and we will be emerging, he posed the question, how will we emerge out of COVID-19? And he suggests that it will necessitate all of us contributing and participating in reweaving the fabric of society. So he's suggesting that the pandemic has torn the fabric of society and it exposed many inequities. And it's going to take effort to reweave this fabric. I suggest to you that it also will take effort to step away from this binary thinking. It's good versus bad. It's us versus them. What would happen if we heightened our level of comfort with complexity and said, it's not one or the other, but it's both at the same time and many other perspectives included? So how can we step away from magical thinking that says there's good and there's bad, there's black and there's white, there's us and there's them? And how do we begin to bridge those differences? And I would suggest to you that differences have to be looked at not from a negative perspective. I have a hard time with the thinking that says we're just all human beings, because that diminishes and wipes away how absolutely unique Alex is versus Ebed versus Tanya, right? All of you are so different. I want to be able to bring in those differences, and they contribute. I don't want to diminish and wash them away. So given that, the first question, what is your role in contributing to social change? I would ask us to step into the complexity. Don't try to make your world simpler. Work towards feeling more comfortable with how complex the world is. So that's my first thought about, as we approach social change is complex. And I was listening to the questions that you offered, Namrata, and yeah, I just jotted down some notes. I mean, you were asking very complex questions. You know, how do we advance if we are on the margin? And what is that critical mass or tipping point? And how do we do this work when it's us against them, or they don't want to change, right? So let's step into the complexity. So that's my first point. Second, what is the role of dialogue? Now, dialogue, we can use the word, but until we begin to unpack it, it's just another behavior that it has been very generalized and is generic. I want us to think about transformative dialogue. I want us to think about dialogue that is an interface of two people, and the focus is on listening with your heart. Dialogue often starts with this idea of ping pong. I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk, and yeah, we just are waiting for the other person to stop talking so that we can tell them what we think. I would suggest to you that isn't dialogue, that's conversation. Or it might be a debate, or it might be an argument, but that is not the transformative dialogue that I want us to participate in today. So it means connecting head and heart. It means connecting what's up here with what's inside your heart. And what do I mean by that? It means that I want you to connect with what you believe. That's what's in your heart. What are your values? How is your presence in everyday life shaped by what's important to you? So that's the role of dialogue. I want us to participate in thinking about, how do we experience and engage in dialogue? Until we have this experience of transformative dialogue, I think we're always working from the base of conversation. Well, let's have conversations. And I think this is something different. It's actually called constructivist listening. And when we engage in constructivist listening, our whole bodies change. So that's what I want us to try in just a few minutes. And then third, how do we build trust? So if research is telling us, as of this morning, that when society feels scary, you disconnect. And because of the pandemic, we have seen that over and over again. Social distancing was, in fact, physical distancing. It was personal distancing, and individuals began to connect with one another less and less. I would suggest to you that building trust is difficult because it calls for vulnerability. Are you willing to be vulnerable in the presence of someone else? So we can talk about trust amongst nations, we can talk about trust amongst leaders, but what if we take a moment to think about, who do you trust? And what allows for trust to develop in your own life? Because if we can't do it amongst each other, it's going to be difficult to grasp and advance this concept at a state, city, state, international level. So how do we do this? All right, so given that brief introduction, these are the instructions for the exercise that I'm going to ask you to participate. In this exercise, there are no observers, and I'm hoping that there's an even number of participants in the room. So someone do a quick count, make sure there's an even number of participants in the room. I'm going to ask Peter, or maybe Tanya. Tanya, if you could stand up and just arrange 2 chairs the way I would want you to have the 2 chairs fixed. So they're going to be touching corners diagonally, right? The chairs are going to be very close to one another, almost facing each other, but at an angle. Yes, yes, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Love you, love you, love you. Thank you. That's it. That's it. Okay. So everyone is, when I give you the go, I'm going to ask you to stand up and find someone that you don't know very well in the room. Okay, you probably know everyone, but someone you don't know very well, someone maybe you haven't spoken to very often. And once you find your partner, I'm going to have you arrange your chairs the way Tanya has arranged them in the front of the room. So everyone's going to do that, and spread yourself out in the room. The person with the shortest hair is going to be the speaker, and the person whose hair is not so short will be the listener. The speaker will have 5 minutes of speaking time. Now, this is your time. It is not conversation time. It is not, what did you do last night time. It is your time to address the question or anything related that you want to fill that space with. While you are speaking, your partner, their job is to listen. It is not to interrupt. It is not to ask questions. You will not be tested on what your speaking partner shares. All I want you to do is to listen, to understand, to truly listen with your heart. Now you can, although you're not speaking, you can let your partner know that you're listening. You can nod your head, you can smile, you can be attentive is what I'm saying, but you cannot say a word. And I'm very strict about this. Let's really give your partner those 5 minutes of talking time. Now your partner may end up after 3 minutes saying, oh my goodness, I have nothing else to say. I don't know what to say. Just sit there and smile and be silent. And you know, your partner can say that and they may struggle, but guess what? They'll probably find something else to add. And it's okay. Some of you are going to fill up your 5 minutes and not want to stop. That's okay too, but we're going to have a limit of 5 minutes today. All right. So any questions about the activity? Because I'm gonna let you go in just 10 seconds here.
Maybe just a specification. So as we all speak, can you hear me?
Not well.
Yeah. So just repeat the question, but I just want to do a little
I'm sorry. I didn't
before.
ask you the question. I didn't share the question yet.
It's okay. It's okay. Maybe
Okay.
the indication, but as we all speak French, it's okay if
Yes.
we do it in
So
French.
you can have your dialogue in French.
Yeah.
And this is the question. I want you to take
Perfect.
5 minutes to speak on what is important to you. What is important to you? What matters to you? And so as you sit with your partner, you don't need anything in your hands. Don't take your phone, don't take your notebook, don't take your pen, nothing. I just want you to get up, and yes, you can use French, you can use English, whatever language you want to use. Sit, I will say, go, I need someone to be timekeeper on your end. And at 5 minutes, stand up so that everyone can see you. And just the minute you see that person stand up, you have to stop talking mid-sentence. All right, so who will be my timekeeper? Perfect. Okay, so 5 minutes, and the minute, as soon as you see on your phone that it's 5 minutes, just stand up, silence, and then everyone will take a breath. They'll sit down, and then if you were speaking, you become the listener, and your partner then shares for 5 minutes. All right, get up and find someone that you haven't spoken to much or don't know well. Up, 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 everyone participates, everyone. And once you find your partner, arrange your chairs. All right, thank you so much. Take a breath and roll your chairs up closer to the camera. So you're not going to sit at your table. I want to see you. So come, yeah, you're all on rolling chairs. Get closer to the camera. Yep, yep, yep. Roll forward, because you won't talk to me if you're way in the back. So everyone just move up. Move up, move up, move up.
Sorry, no one.
Move up closer, move up closer. Just grab a chair and come on up. I know this is possible. I'm doing work with students in Lagos, Nigeria, and they have one smartphone that they use for Zoom, and they all come closer, and I can see all of their faces in the screen. So, yeah, you can't stay at your desk. Roll. Isn't it fun to roll in those chairs? Roll up. Come on up, come on up. Lovely people, I'm not going to continue unless you roll up closer. Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Come on up, come on up. Thank you. I don't know your name in the blue shirt, but thank you so much for stepping out there and rolling forward. Thank you. All right, so we have about 20 minutes. Let's just talk a little bit. For those of you for whom this was the first time doing this type of dialogue exchange, just some quick reactions. How did it feel like? We'll start with the person in the blue shirt that took the bold move to roll forward. Roll on up a little bit and I'll be able to hear you. There you go. Excellent.
Well, for my first experience, I realized that 5 minutes is kind of long when you got to talk to someone without getting any answers. But I think it was a great way to speak about our life and what was important for us, and to go a little bit deeper in our thoughts, since the other one was not answering us. So we have to keep explaining and going deeper into our thoughts about that stuff. That's pretty much it for me.
Excellent. And then in the reverse, how did it feel to listen without being expected to have to respond or question or say anything? How did that feel for you?
Well, for me, it was kind of hard, since I'm the kind of one that I like to talk. So it was hard for me to restrain myself to answer each time. I was nodding a lot, but not able to respond was like, it was hard. It was hard. I kept smiling and yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, someone who's done the exercise before, come on up, just roll up so that I can hear you. How did it feel doing the exercise?
For me,
Go ahead.
it started to get better and better. Like every first time that we've done it together, I was like, oh, I can like not answer and stuff like that. Now I was able to not answer at all. So that's a good thing. But I still had like so much question in my head. So when I started talking, the first thing I did is ask question, and I was like, oh no, I need to talk about myself and not ask a question about what you said. But yeah, and I was like surprised that when you said that we're gonna do the exercise, I wasn't like threat or anything. Like the first time when you were saying, oh, you're gonna have to talk with strangers, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to talk with people I don't know. And I was like, oh, I know the exercise, I know I can do it. And yeah, so that's it. That's progress.
Excellent. You know, what happens when we don't ask questions? Because we're trained by society. We're trained by society to get ready to respond, to ask questions. Active listening says, oh, you should be able to summarize the key points of what you just heard. But constructivist listening is asking you to give your full attention to another human being. And what does that allow when you're not interrupted? If you're the speaker and you're not interrupted, what happens? What happens? What's different about this sharing? Marianne?
Like instead of like trying to, because when you're asking question, you're really just trying to diverge what the person is trying to say. So instead of like interrupting and asking question, you more or less let the person in front of you like going in his own way on his own thought.
That's exactly right. When we don't interrupt, when we don't ask questions, we get the story that the speaker wants to share, not the story that you want to hear. Because when you ask a question, the story changes now to respond to your question. When we think about how will we engage with others, right? How can we make these connections? How can we contribute to social change? I would suggest to you that it's going to require this very deep listening and it's a deeper type of sharing that happens that allows you to be vulnerable. And in 5 minutes, how much did you learn about your partner? Someone else, white shirt. I'm just looking at colors right now. So white shirt, yeah, just come on up.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I mean, we have to really keep thinking what was important for us, and for me it was a little bit hard because I'm not someone who talks like like the previous man. So, but I mean, it was yeah, a good reflection, a good exercise. For the hearing part, it was for me it was easier. I guess I was with Vincent, so it was
That wasn't easy. What is your name?
My name is Philip.
Philip. So Philip, why do you think I asked you and your peers here, why do you think I asked you to do this exercise?
To experience what is dialogue. I mean, through speaking and hearing. I don't know. That's what I think.
Yes, it was to want to create a space for this dialogue to happen. But why? And then I'm going to ask Ebed to start walking closer, but I'm going to have you finish here. Why take precious time to ask you to do dialogue?
Probably to feel what the other person is, and probably not only what he or she says, but what he is, probably. So 5 minutes, I think it's enough to feel the person.
Philip, I love that you gave that response, because you, similar to many others, and I've done this exercise with thousands of people, never once have I heard someone say, oh, I found it valuable to be able to talk. Almost inevitably, they say what you've said, which was, it gave me a chance to listen. and to learn about the other person. And that's a powerful position to be in. There's a lot of power in that statement that you just shared. And it's one that I resonate with, and it's one that I think is extremely, extremely valuable. So thank you so much for sharing. And now the hot seat goes over to Eben. Hello, young man. How are you doing?
Very good, and you?
I'm doing well. Okay, how does this, we're going to start closing the circle back around. How does this connect to this big question that all of you sent me? This question about, social change and about resistance and people that aren't loyal or trustworthy. How does this exercise, Abed, connect for you?
Well, very tough, tough questions, and answers are not very easy to find either. So I think for me, it's very important to understand. Dialogue is very important for me because, since it's my third exercise, I think I've become a better listener now, because before it was pretty hard to kind of listen without talking. But I think, since our last trip to Japan, and then when I came back to Canada, so I think I've become a better listener. So things are improving quite a lot. And when it comes to all the questions that we ask you about societal change and stuff like that, so I'm still very consistent in my dream or my project for 80 stuff like that. And this is something that will not change, for the next 20, 25 or 30, 50 years. And then when it comes to societal change, I think when I look at what's actually happening in Haiti now, dialogue is very important, but not any kind of dialogue, but transformative dialogue that will actually help to change things around in Haiti, to kind of transform the way we think as a nation or a nation state, but also the way we do things and the respect that we have to have, not only for our environment, but for our citizens alike. So this is how I understand it, and this is one of the reasons why we actually ask you the questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, the more we practice this, just listening to understand, the better we get at it, as you're suggesting, but also the more profound it becomes, So I know we only have 12 minutes left. I'm going to open it up for questions. What do you want to ask me? Take a breath. Nobody's breathing in that room. I can feel when you're not breathing. Take a breath. Just take a breath. What questions do you have? What's on your mind right now?
How are you today, The question is about you. How are you today? How was your day?
How is my day?
Yeah.
I was very much looking forward.
Yesterday.
Yeah, I was very much looking forward actually to our encounter. And all week, I really sat with, what would be most meaningful in my time with you? What would be most meaningful? And I think this idea of, let's not get just stuck on thinking we have to have the answers, but let's really use our questions to learn about each other and to really grasp at perceiving what's underneath, what's inside. So actually, I'll have to be honest, yesterday I had lunch with this family from India and my son. So the 5 of us were having lunch, and I said to them, I'm meeting with Laval students tomorrow morning. And they've asked me this question. And we had the most fabulous lunch conversation about, how do we not feel despair when the problems in the world are so big? And the father of this family, who's just this lovely, lovely human being, said, we have to appreciate the part of the world that we sit in, and how we can begin there to have impact. And I realized that even though we were thousands of miles or kilometers away from one another, I feel such a sense of closeness, because we have this shared conversation at this moment about, well, I too am asking, how can I contribute to social change? How can I feel that radical hope that Namrata mentioned in her talk, right? How can I have that sense when I'm experiencing life on the margin? So Arnold Toynbee, yes, he was on the margin, right? What Bell Hooks would say, being on the margin means you're not in the center of the majority. So yeah, I live so much of my life on the margin. It's fabulous. So being that I'm on the margin, how do I find that sense of hope, that sense of audacity to say, I will speak my truth? And it really comes from an ability to connect to my values, to connect to what is important to me. And that's why I posed the question to all of you this evening. Because if you can connect to what is important to you, what matters to you, I would suggest to you that everything springs from that center, from that core. So the more I can connect to my non-negotiables and my values, the firmer I am in being able to withstand whatever wind comes. So thank you for asking how I'm doing. That's my state of the state at the moment. Another question? I'm not going to let them off the hook so quickly, Vincent. So yeah. I'm going to give them some space. Let's see. What else would you like to know?
Maybe, Maria. It's okay. It's okay.
Yes.
Do you realize that you break the screen in this room? You know, you are in Tokyo and you were with us. You know, you just destroy the distance between you and us. You know, and it's a matter for everyone here. It's a matter of your life condition. What's a life condition when you are so far away and so close with us? You know. Thank you very, very much, Maria. Oh, by the way, if you want to open a fan club, you know, everybody will be behind you. I know that you don't like that, you know, but there is a lot of people in this room who are ready to do that with you. Thank you very, very, very much, Maria.
No.
See you in Japan next year.
Yes, yes, we will be waiting for all of you. And thank you again for just being who you are. Just thank you for being who you are. There is no one else who has or will have the ability to be who you are and to make the contribution you will make. So stand fast in that space. And if you're on the margin, I'm there with you, right? If you're in the center, then pull us closer to you. We